When people see their greatest passions disappear before their eyes, it can lead to dark thoughts, and in the most extreme cases, death. This is the story of Goneim and the Pyramid of Sekhemkhet.
Ever wondered which choices and twists of fate shaped the world as we know it? Stories that began as whispers, only to rise into legends echoed across the globe? Step with us into the shadows of the past. We need history.
Muhammed Zakaria Goneim was born in Egypt in the year 1905. From a young age, he was obsessed with history and archaeology. Goneim was destined for greatness, and the Egyptian would get his chances. Before the Second World War, the young archaeologist began his first excavation at Saqqara, where he oversaw the uncovering of the pyramid of the ruler Unas. Then, the terrible war stopped all archaeological works in Egypt. There was no time to study, only time to attack and defend. After the atrocities of the war, Goneim returned to Saqqara. He had always been fascinated by a rectangular structure he could faintly see beneath the sand. The structure lay only about 100 meters from the Pyramid of Unas. Goneim therefore hoped for a similar finding. Working on archaeological sites was wonderful, but discovering your own pyramid, now that would be his life's achievement. Goneim received advice from his friend and colleague Lower to start at the corners of the structure, to calculate its surface area. What neither Goneim nor Lower expected was that the structure turned out to be the limestone embankment of an undiscovered pyramid complex. Due to the large amount of sand that had settled on the complex over the centuries, it was nicknamed the Buried Pyramid. The entire complex ultimately measured 185 by 500 meters. People often think of pyramids as large detached triangular structures, but pyramids were true complexes with temples, storage rooms, statues and embankments. The rulers buried in the pyramids were worshipped after their death by a whole group of priests. So, the pyramids weren't just cemeteries for the rulers of societies, but bustling complexes long after their leader's death. But back to the excavation. Goneim had stumbled upon a pyramid complex from the 3rd dynasty. The leaders from this era ruled Egypt from 2680 to 2190 BC. Further investigation of the complex began in the first half of the 1950s. It turned out that the pyramid had been built on very uneven terrain, necessitating the construction of enormous stabilizing platforms before construction could even begin. This challenging construction site was likely chosen because of its proximity to the tombs of the 2nd dynasty. In this way, the rulers of the 3rd dynasty ensured continuity of rule with the 2nd dynasty. By connecting yourself with previous rulers, you could show to your people that you truly belonged to the throne. The embankment was full of niches and false doors to confuse robbers. It was impossible to simply enter the complex, as the embankment was a full 10 meters high. The walls were made thick enough to allow guards to patrol. Therefore, the embankment included several sentries. Ultimately, it turned out that the pyramid was only 8 meters high, and therefore never completed. In fact, only one of the 6 or 7 steps had been built. This happened frequently in ancient Egypt. For example, when the leader died prematurely. After examining the slope, Goneim calculated that the pyramid was originally intended to be 70 meters tall. On Lower's advice, Goneim began excavating near the northern section of the embankment. Here, he discovered an 80-meter-long underground passage leading to the pyramid's burial chamber. In this corridor, he first discovered the bones of sacrificed animals. He also found papyrus from the 26th dynasty. Finally, he found stone vessels containing 21 gold bracelets, mussel shells, and gilded corals. Further along the tunnel, Goneim found several stems bearing the name of the ruler buried in the pyramid, Sekhemkhet. If these riches still lay within the pyramid's corridors, what lay within the burial chamber? Finding a stone embankment was great. Digging up a pyramid was fantastic. However, finding a mummy, that would be astronomical. Sekhemkhet's burial chamber lay 30 meters beneath the pyramid, and it was here that Goneim stumbled upon Sekhemkhet's alabaster sarcophagus. And best of all, the sarcophagus was still sealed. Dried flowers also lay on the tomb. Goneim was convinced he had found an unopened sarcophagus. If this was true, then it would be worldwide news. Loa tried to dampen his friend's enthusiasm. He argued that there were too few riches in the burial chamber, and that grave robbers had already visited the pyramid. Goneim was too eager and ignored Loa's advice. The Egyptologist invited politicians, journalists and reporters to join him in the grand opening of the sarcophagus. The big day arrived, and everyone stood tensely around the tomb. But when the sarcophagus was opened, it turned out to be completely empty. The disappointment was immense, and probably even more so for Goneim himself. One newspaper headline read, "They dig for 3 years and find nothing." However, it didn't take long for Goneim to overcome his setback. The discovery of the Pyramid of Sekhemkhet remained a fantastic achievement. Goneim wrote a book about it, The Buried Pyramid, and toured the United States with a series of lectures. Goneim was on the road to success. His lectures were well received, and his book was translated into several languages. But when he returned to Saqqara, he was suddenly accused of theft and smuggling. Goneim was denied access to his pyramid. According to the accusations, Goneim had allegedly stolen a large barrel full of antiquities from one of the previous pyramids where he had been excavating. The strangest thing of all, the police had no evidence whatsoever of Goneim's smuggling. All complaints against Goneim were based on pure rumors. The Egyptologist was interrogated repeatedly by the police to the point of exhaustion. Lower, Goneim's good friend, completely rejected the story and began his own investigation. This investigation led him to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and there, Lower easily recovered the lost items. The barrel of valuable artifacts had been brought to the museum by mistake. Lower was incredibly relieved and wanted to share this good news with his friends. So, the next morning, he immediately left for Saqqara. But there he received terrible news. Goneim had fallen into a depressive episode due to the persistent police harassment and the fear of his lost career. In 1957, Goneim took his own life by jumping into the Nile. It wasn't until 6 years after Goneim's death that excavations resumed on the Pyramid of Sekhemkhet, this time led by Lower. Lower would make several more major discoveries in the pyramid. For example, near the burial chamber. He found a small chamber containing the remains of a coffin and a 2-year-old boy, possibly Sekhemkhet's son. Lower also developed his own theory about why Sekhemkhet wasn't in his tomb, even though the sarcophagus appeared to be sealed shut. According to Lower, people from a later dynasty had moved the ruler due to extensive tomb robberies. The Egyptians of the time hoped that their former ruler would thus be able to rest in peace. The story of Goneim remained strange. Who started the rumors about Goneim's theft, and why were the police so hard on the Egyptologist when there was no evidence? Questions also remain unanswered about the Pyramid of Sekhemkhet. Why was the pyramid never finished? And where is Sekhemkhet's body? As is often the case in history, many questions remain unanswered. Further research may yield new insights, but it's quite possible we'll never know exactly what happened. If you'd like to learn more about the pyramids of Egypt, I recommend reading Miroslav Werner's book The Pyramids. If you found this interesting, be sure to follow me, give me a like, and comment on topics I should excavate in the future. Until next time.